educational insights. With me, your host, Mariam Mia. And now we on our hashtag kindness and compassion segment where we feature an NPO, NBO, or PBO. Today we're going to be featuring TIBA. And from TIBA, we are going to be speaking to Sister Faranaaz Waja, who is a social worker at TIBA, but as well as an educational facilitator, and she trains educators on identification and inclusion of learners with disabilities and with learning barriers into mainstream school. Uh, she also runs the sub office of EDHASA, that is the Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder for the the Johannesburg South Branch, and plays an integral role in advocating on behalf of learners with barriers to learning, as well as supporting educators in the education process. And it is within this role, she also provides further support to the parents. And thus, Sister Farnaz is not the end. I will definitely would like to speak to her on our educational insight segment, and I am going to have a special um, a discussion regarding the support for parents whose children manifest with attention learning deficit. So today we're going to focusing on TIBA and our work as a social worker at TIBA, but definitely on the educational front, I am going to get her back because the barriers to learning and help integrating children into mainstream for me is something I'm very passionate about and work extensively with. But also, she supervises and mentors the staff at TIBA and provides supportive services to 75 in-house clients that are recipient of support services from TIBA. So basically, a committed, selfless community worker as well, in terms of helping everybody, people with learning difficulties and special needs as well. So let's welcome Sister Faranaaz Waja. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Inspired Afternoons here on Salam Media, Sister Faranaaz.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's only my pleasure to be a part of this most enlightening program, I would think. Gee.
Jazakallah, and like I say, Allah connects people, and Alhamdulillah, a COVID connection in one of the WhatsApp groups brought Sister Farnaz, and like I say, we may be physically isolated from each other, but Allah finds ways to connect people together, like-minded people together, and that's how Allah connected us purely by chance, just as support to each other. Allah connected us, and Alhamdulillah, today you're on here imparting advice, and also it gives us an opportunity to acknowledge the organization TIBA. Now, Sister Farnaz, I want us to go back in time. I think even when you and I were toddlers, because TIBA is one of the oldest running organizations. My spouse's grandfather, the late Abdurrahman Mia, was very instrumental in terms of getting TIBA started in Lenasia. Those years, there were a few stalwarts in the community that felt very strongly, because those years, I mean, if you were blind, you were born blind, or even if you had visual challenges or partially blind, or over the years developed blindness due to certain health conditions, that's your life. You just had to accept that and go about your business. There were not any facilities available, and it was because of this that TIBA was formed. So tell us a little bit, first of all, what does the acronym TIBA stand for, and the how the inception of TIBA, because it's a beautiful history and it's part of the effort of legendary forefathers in the Lenasia community.
A beautiful history indeed. Miriam, going back to what you said, how we met and with the whole COVID query and stuff like that. I honestly believe that nobody we will ever meet, or nobody that passes by through our lives, just happens just because. And, Allah has a reason that people pass through our doors and that we, for some reason, have to meet with people. So just to touch on that there definitely was a reason. And inshallah, we'll be able to benefit our communities from this relationship that we have formed. Going back to TIBA's history, it's definitely not when we were toddlers. It goes back to 1949, actually. So in 1949, there were TIBA's roots had actually somehow been triggered. And I'm glad that you spoke about Mr. Mia. Okay. So Mr. Mia, I think you said he's your uncle-in-law. Am I correct?
My husband's grandfather.
Your husband's grandfather.
My husband's grandfather.
Oh, okay. So let me tell you what happened. If you're looking at the history of TIBA, so during the 1940s, all right, there was this like colored and Indian services, and they would from Coronationville render eye care services to people in the community requiring eye care services. But also around that time, what happened was that when we moved towards the 1960s, the whole apartheid thing kicked in, and state was saying that they wanted segregated services. That means Indians must have their own services and own schools, and it was the whole racial segregation thing where people lived in separate areas, and it was that whole Group Areas Act. Okay, and what happened is that in order for this colored and blind services to be to receive any sort of subsidies, what would happen was that they needed to separate services. That means Indians had to only render services to Indians and coloreds had to only render services to coloreds. And therefore, based on that, Indians and coloreds had to separate services. So this was like, after the 1940s, going right through into the 1960s. And it was around that time that late Mr. Ibrahim Patel forged some relationships with Mr. Mia. And Mr. Mia had, basically, because of the fact that Mr. Mia was very, very involved with, in 1949, around that time, with the Colored and Indian Blind Associations, they looked at how can they now continue rendering services to Indian people. And you won't believe it, back then, when they say, even though that services were segregated, they would actually, if I can use the term, secretly still continued rendering services to colored and Indian people. But eventually, in order to get subsidized by the state and for their protective workshops to be subsidized by the state, the colored and Indian services had to split, and our initial members, Mr. Ibrahim Patel, Mr. Isubana being one of them also, had to go their separate routes, and they were then contacted by Mr. A.H. Mia and said, you guys coming from a background of working in the field of welfare, and how about we work together and render services for people with visual impairment and blindness. And I think if you look at Mr. Ibrahim Patel and Mr. Isubana and Mr. A.H. Mia initially held the host meeting and discussions were made, and then Mr. Patel and him had a subcommittee that would overlook services in the Lenasia area. And because of racial segregation, the Indian people were denied services at that time. And therefore, it was around 1973 that together with Mr. A.H. Mia, Mr. Ibrahim Patel, Mr. Isubana, and a few other people whose names I can't give you. I think it was Rashida Monia, if I'm not mistaken. There was also Shirley Watkinson and a Musa Magda, that this subcommittee was formed. Initially, the subcommittee was known as the Transvaal Indian Association for Persons with Visual Impairment and Blindness. And because they had to use the word Indian in there to show that they were only rendering services to Indian people. And going forward, eventually, I think the name was so long and complicated, they became the Transvaal Indian Blind Association, and that is where TIBA gets the acronym from. So even though we've moved on from the apartheid era, TIBA was so well known in the community that we left that acronym. But TIBA is now called TIBA Services for the Blind and does not stand for the Transvaal Indian Blind Association anymore, because our services are holistic and they're open to all races and all nationalities and all religions. Yeah. So just some background there.
It's fascinating. I'm one of those people who love history, and especially what the foundations laid by our forefathers, the stalwarts in the community. I always tell my children, I say, they don't make people with such qualities like they did before, in terms of they care for the community, in terms of putting their own needs last to service the communities. As you've said, they needed to bypass the system, or actually play the system to their advantage. Hence, for the funding, use Indian, but quietly then assist the so-called colored, because we were all segregation and black members of the community. Because remember, and now we speak of whites and non-whites, but that time you were like racially classed in terms of you were either white, Indian, colored, or black. So it was even apartheid seemed to keep us apart, in terms of keep the blacks apart from the Indians and the coloreds apart from the blacks as well. So that's how they created racism within us, in terms of not even whites against non-whites, but everybody was clearly defined, and you had to live in your little enclaves. So I love how they were ingenious in terms of how they bypassed the system, naming Indian, but quietly servicing. Because look, if you suffer from visual impairment, it doesn't matter whether you're colored, whether you're black, whether you're white, whatever it is, you're going to care for an individual. You see a person, an individual, and you're going to try and assist them. So it's fascinating, the history behind this organization, because, and also they were, I would say, very, very ahead in terms of their thinking, because before, nobody looked at people with disabilities and what can we do to improve their circumstances and give them a better quality of life. So besides being stalwarts and legends, they were also visionaries of their time in terms of their forward thinking. Because remember, you had the challenge of apartheid, but within this challenge, you still had the vision to care for the marginalized members of society. And for me, that is so brave, and it's a legacy, and something for us to learn by. So tell me now, moving to today's time, I see that you've it's changed a whole lot in terms of you get university students, like you say, from university, or which was Rao. Then again, there's lots of changes in names, because previously it was Rao. Now it's UJ, University of Johannesburg students that are studying undergrad studies for the degree in what's it? What is the degree for? Yes, ophthalmology. In terms of that, they come and they provide services. Then, in terms of the screening and the eye care and things like that, so you network and you build partnerships, so that the best eye care and support is given to those that are visually impaired.
Yeah, before we go there, Miriam, talking about Mr. A.R. Mia, I just want to tell you that I'm going to send you this book. It's TIBA's 41st anniversary. Okay, because he's so closely related to you, and his face is on our very, very front page. And, exactly like you're talking, these were the giants. These were the giants of making services and resources available. Today, we are able to render the kind of services that we are because of people such as this. And I think your husband should be so proud that he comes from a family that has people of this caliber. And I'm going to send you a copy. This copy was printed on the 41st anniversary of TIBA, because Mr. A.R. Mia was one of the persons that actually was very, very instrumental in putting together eye care services and restoring the vision of the Indian people, not only Indian people, but, like I was saying, they were doing it secretly for colored people as well, and probably the black people as well. So I think it is very, very important for me to touch on that, to say that it is because of them that we are where we are today, and we can never,
Alhamdulillah.
yeah, we can never ever forget them. Okay, so coming back to what TIBA currently does, I see you've touched on
Mm-hmm.
TIBA's eye clinic. So that is, TIBA's eye clinic is actually threefold. Okay, so the one you talk about, the University of Johannesburg students, that was previously, it was known as the Rand Afrikaans University. Okay, so I think it's since about 19. It's a good few years where TIBA runs this eye clinic. I would think from about 1997, if I'm not mistaken, that TIBA made it. So at that time, I was not yet working at TIBA. It was just prior to me starting, or it could be around 1995 or 1996, where the then social worker, her name was Nirmala Desai, and our orientation and mobility instructress, Miss Yasmin Hussein. I think, if I don't take their names, I'll be doing a disservice to this interview today, because they were instrumental in liaising with UJ, or Rand Afrikaans University at that time, and organizing for optometry students to come here and to render services and eye care services to the Lenasia community. So this was just before I started at TIBA. Yasmin is actually an orientation and mobility instructress by profession. We're good friends. We go back many, many years. Yasmin and myself went to school together. And and we still have contact, and Yasmin's still a practicing orientation and mobility instructress. So I think it's very important that I talk about them. It's most unfortunate that Mrs. Nirmala Desai is late now, and Nirmala worked right up to the beginning of 1998, and I took over from Nirmala Desai. But, I think, and together with Mr. Ibrahim Patel, I think Mr. Ibrahim Patel was a giant when he came to eye care services. So Mr. Ibrahim Patel is now late, he's marhum, and when I started TIBA, he was the chairman at that time. Mr. Ibrahim Patel was also involved with the MC Karbai School for the Deaf and TIBA. And I know that even though he was involved on those platforms and on those levels, he always held vision impaired close to his heart. I had the honor of working with him for a good maybe 17, 18 years. My mentor indeed. It's funny because when we used to go for department meetings to the Department of Social Development and stuff like that, when I started off, I was just like new in the field of blindness, and he would be my guide and my mentor and that. And everybody at Social Development thought Mr. Ibrahim Patel was my father. Okay, because we were like two Indian faces sitting amongst the other races, and for some reason they just took it that Mr. Ibrahim Patel was my father. But honestly, that was an honor to me because, I think in the field of welfare, that's what he exactly was. He was like my guide and my protector and my mentor, and literally he was my father, because everything that I learned in this field came from the stalwart. Mr. Ibrahim Patel was actually a school teacher and came from the fields of education, and then he was a principal for many years. He was I know somewhere in Roodepoort, and then he was also at the Greyville Primary School. So he was a school principal, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, at Trinity as well. But my mentor, indeed, he resonated so much of goodness, and he resonated such good values, and he always said that he put the needs of all those that he served in front of his and in front of the needs of his family. And I hope that his sons may have been listening to this interview today, because that's what I saw him. I saw him as a father figure. He was somebody that he was my boss, and I worked with him for so many years, but there was never a day that he raised his voice. He was always so willing to allow us as staff to grow. If you had a goal and a vision, and he felt it could benefit the community, then he was so willing to let you grow. So just going back to that, I feel it's very, very important that these are the people that I touch on, and I say that it is because of them that we are where we are today as well.
No, and I'm pleased. For us, that is what the segment is. It's about acknowledging people that give selflessly of their time and their resources to serve the community, to serve humanity at large. And that is what this platform at Salam Media does. It's a humanitarian online platform that these are the stories. It's ordinary people that make an extraordinary difference in somebody's lives. I mean, think about a family that are not adequately resourced. Just a stick that's an aid, a walking aid, is a luxury they could not afford. So you might have a child that is written off because they are now have a disability and they sort of have no future and they're going to be a burden. But yet, here's an institution like TIBA that uplifts them, uplifts their lives, make it easier and gives the family support, because that's what it is. When one member of your family is visually impaired, it impacts on the whole family, because the whole family has to support this individual. So not only does TIBA, I know TIBA provides services to the visually impaired individual, but you have auxiliary services that support a particular family. And I know at TIBA, everybody becomes a family. I know you and all the staff at TIBA and the volunteers uh, invest personally in the family. So you develop a family relationship. So it's not just an individual coming with somebody there getting receiving treatment and that. No, I know it's about family wellness at the end of the day, together with empowering somebody that is visually impaired.
No, definitely. I just want to also, so just to answer your questions on the eye clinic and the students from the University of Johannesburg coming through. I told you there were three parts to it. So the one part is that we are allowing, TIBA's allowing and affording students the opportunity to actually take their theory and put it into practice. So we get third years and final year optometry students, and we render eye clinic services to people in the community that that can't afford medical aid. Okay, and they can't afford probably going to our private optometrist because of the price of spectacles and stuff like that. So we run an eye clinic here twice a week, where we get students coming in from the universities, and they do all the eye tests here. We then have the spectacles made up for so people will make appointments, people from the communities, and our services are aimed at domestic workers, unemployed, the elderly, like your pensioners, the homeless, and people that can't afford eye care services. And we make glasses available and spectacles available to them. We even will have like a separate zakah fund, where if there's people that really can't afford it, because we have to charge them a small nominal fee to cover our laboratory charges. Yet if there's those that can't even afford that, we will make those glasses available. And I think that's a very, very important service and an instrumental service that we are running in the Lenasia community, but not only Lenasia and the surrounding areas. Also, that a very big part of that program would be that we pick up many eye pathologies while doing eye tests. We pick up many eye pathologies, and I think then TIBA then plays an instrumental role in restoring vision of people that would otherwise have become blind. All right. The other aspect of it is that together with the Amit Katrada Lenmed Private Hospital, they have a partnership with us, where if we are from our eye clinic, if we pick up we pick up elderly that have cataract and they can't see because of the cataract, but they cannot afford to have the surgery. So what we do is we've got a partnership, and I want to use this platform to thank the Amit Katrada Private Hospital, because we've got a beautiful partnership with them, where they provide free cataract surgeries for people that come from the TIBA Eye Clinic. And we have they have assisted us to restore the vision of thousands of people, coming from as far as Wombats and all over Nelspruit, Wombats. We don't only see people in Lenasia. We don't only see people from Lenasia. We see people from all over. If you have a need and you can get to us, we will assist you. So I think that's a very, very important part. The free cataract surgery that the Amit Katrada Hospital provides and assists TIBA with. And then, like I'm saying, so the reason I said it was threefold was that we're able to pick up pathologies and refer clients and restore vision. We're able to do free cataract surgeries for people that are homeless, people that are pensioners, people that are unemployed. I mean, let's face it, it's our middle class cannot even afford medical aid these days. And I feel so proud that we are part of that journey of restoring the vision of people that may have not had that opportunity to see, you know. And I think that our eye clinic plays an instrumental role in doing that, and the University of Johannesburg affording us their students to do these eye tests, but also that we affording them the opportunity to take their theory and put it into practice. And I think that
Alhamdulillah. Yeah.
yeah,
It's a gift for me. Imagine if you are part of an instrument that the Almighty uses as a means to give somebody that gift of sight. Like you say, a cataract is a relatively simple procedure now with technology and environment in medicine, but yet it's a very deliberating condition for somebody who just has a cataract. It's just that part that needs to be removed, a lens inserted, and somebody, alhamdulillah, has the gift of sight, the gift of vision. And if you facilitate this, and all I say whenever I interview organizations such as yourself, it's always a partnership and it's networking. And I keep on saying, and my mantra is, we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
of
Everybody
course.
works together. And once you work together, that unity, really, we achieve so much more. We pull resource together, and then with additional resources, you utilize it in additional areas. Sister Faranaaz, I know we've caught up a time. I know this is just the first time I'm speaking to you, because Alhamdulillah, the Almighty has gifted you in various talents in assisting people with learning challenges and barriers. So I am going to get my producer to contact you, because I have a segment on Mondays, Educational Insights, and I would definitely like to discuss the support for parents with children that have been diagnosed with ADD or the ADHD. So, inshallah, we will chat to you in the future. Shukran for coming and even taking us back down memory lane in terms of the stalwarts that started this fantastic organization that have, even today, we're reaping the benefits of their efforts. And we wish you strength. And inshallah, may the Almighty continue taking TIBA, continue using TIBA in service of community. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah and Ameen to all your du'as, Miriam. Please do remember us in your du'as during these trying times. And it will be my absolute pleasure to be a part of this show again and to assist you and whoever I can in whatever way I can. Jazakallah khairan for having me.
Amin. We're going to go for a short break, and then we're going to continue with Attorney Salma Leclerc, and we'll be discussing notarial work. And then stay tuned, because thereafter we're going to be chatting to Sister Naseem Khan all about her Hajj experience.